Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Ambassador Gina Abercrombie Winstanley, the Middle East Policy Council's president, and we welcome you. We're pleased to host our 114th Capitol Hill Conference in the Capitol Visitor Center. Our thanks to all of you who have joined us live today, as well as those from around the world who have tuned in through the live broadcast. For our discussion today, we've assembled an outstanding panel of speakers to address the issue of artificial intelligence in the Middle East, opportunities and challenges. I was recently reading about its use in medical diagnostics in Kuwait, an MOU between Morocco and Israel to establish a center of excellence to focus on aeronautics and artificial intelligence research. Bahrain has set itself up as a hub for AI innovation and collaboration, and Egypt has launched the National Artificial Intelligence Strategy to support the nation's sustainable development goals. I used it for the first time a couple of weeks ago to edit a LinkedIn post. I will tell you, my post was great from the beginning, but it did tighten up the language a bit. It was really interesting watching the words change before my eyes. Just as I was getting excited about this use, I also read an article about the need to be cautious with what comes out of AI sources. A question put to GPT: do Israelis deserve to be free? And the answer was yes. Like all people, Israelis deserve to be free. Freedom is a fundamental human right. There's more, but that was the open and the gist of the answer. The same question put: do Palestinians deserve to be free? And the answer begins: as an AI language model, I do not have personal opinions, feelings, or beliefs. The question of whether Palestinians deserve to be free is a complex and controversial issue with many different perspectives and opinions. It goes on. Now, we see the differences in those two answers, and to be fair, Tibetans and Kurds fare just as poorly as Palestinians. To be fairer, the answers have been changed since that article came out to consistently support freedom for everyone. But questions about the content should give us all some pause as we go forward. So we look forward to a robust discussion of these issues with our panelists. But before I turn to today's program, I would like to say a few words about the Middle East Policy Council. We were established in 1981 for the purpose of promoting dialogue and education concerning the United States and the countries of the Middle East. 2023 marks our 42nd year of such contributions to the U.S. Middle East dialogue. Among our core programs are our quarterly Capitol Hill conferences, such as today's event, our quarterly journal, Middle East Policy, which can be found in more than 16,000 libraries worldwide, and our educational outreach program, Teach Mideast, which provides educational resources on the Middle East geared for secondary school students and teachers. We also have several products focused on the informational needs of embassies and Capitol Hill staff. Please visit us on the web, www.mepc.org, and our Teach Mideast program at www.teachmideast.org. to learn more about our organization and our activities. Concerning today's event, the conference proceedings will be posted in video and transcript form on our website, as will a recap of the program. Now, let me turn to today's distinguished panelists. Our first speaker will be Mr. Jerome Duvall, Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at Verbosity, and a certified economic developer. Speaking next will be Mr. Mike Sexton, a Senior Policy Advisor for Cyber and Artificial Intelligence at Third Way, and co-editor of Cyber War and Cyber Peace. Our third panelist will be Mr. Mohammed Suleiman, Director of Strategic Technologies and Cybersecurity Programs at the Middle East Institute and Manager within McLarty Associates Middle East and North Africa Practice. The moderator of today's discussion will be Ms. Basima Al-Ghussein, the Executive Director of the Middle East Policy Council. As you have seen, we have placed an index card on each of your seats, and as you have questions, please write them on the index card. Hold the card up for our staff to collect and bring to the dais. Please do so during the panelists' presentation so that our moderator can review them and prepare the questions for the discussion. For those of you joining us through the video broadcast, please submit your questions through the email address at info@mepc.org. With that, I am pleased to turn the floor over to Mr. Duvall to begin his opening statements. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. I would like to first start off by expressing my appreciation to the Middle East Policy Council for extending this opportunity to be part of such a crucial discussion. AI in the Middle East, Opportunity and Challenges. I believe having diverse perspectives enriches the depth and breadth of the conversation. I'm honored to speak from a perspective of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so you're probably wondering, who is Verbosity? We are a certified minority business enterprise driven by a mission to heal communities through technology with a focus on compliance, accountability, and transparency. Our core expertise lies on an innovative smart layer solution, leveraging geofencing technology to digitize outdoor spaces. This adaptable framework is tailored to integrate dynamic workflows with the ability to generate and verify task completion. Our technology has been battle-tested and proven. Our geospatial cleanliness and public safety patrol stands as an innovative approach to community policing, having dropped crime here in DC by 67.7% in 10 communities. As pioneers in automated workforce deployment, our outdoor environments, we simplify the process with our mapping solution, Map It, Snap It, Send It, which is a crowdsourcing tool, our GIS MarTags, a cutting-edge proximity-based approach to asset and fleet management solutions. With the integration of AI, we automate data analysis to generate insight that can help our clients make better informed decisions. I want you to hold on to this idea as part of my presentation. Technology is meant to enhance human behavior, not to replace it. It is widely acknowledged that we live in a society that is influenced by various forms of biases. Biases can manifest in different ways, such as implicit bias, unconscious attitudes or stereotypes that affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. Other forms of bias, which we're all very familiar with, such as racial bias, gender bias, social, economic, political, culture, and cognitive perceptive distortion. I will approach artificial intelligence from a bias prevention lens. I will focus on the concerns of bias algorithms, exploring the multifaceted reasons behind its occurrence, from training data to human biases, and the need for policies and procedures and consumer protection. I will offer recommendations to establish a foundational framework aiding policymakers in navigating the terrain of AI. This framework will serve to guarantee that the development and the deployment of AI aligns with societal norms and values. I want to start my conversation off with fairness and biases. Recent incidents have highlighted instances where AI systems have made inappropriate remarks about minority groups. It is important to understand that artificial intelligence relies solely on data and outcome optimization to make decisions. The data used to train AI may be inadequate. For example, a company may discover that its AI algorithm are biased against African Americans due to the inefficient representation of the training data. Additionally, bias may present if the data collected was from a biased society. By a raise of hands, how many of you believe that we live in a biased society? Right? So for those of you online, that was probably about 95% of this audience. Let me quickly shift to the Middle East impact. The potential impact for AI on the global economy is staggering. It's estimated up to $15.7 trillion by 2030. The Middle East, with projects like the one in Saudi Arabia, if you have not seen NEOM, leads the way in harnessing AI for a sustainable and cognitive future. NEOM is designed to respond to some of the most pressing global challenges facing urban areas and inspiring an alternative way of living. Living in New York City, it's a model we should absolutely look at. The city will preserve 95% of the natural environment around the site, highlighting mankind's relationship with the natural world. NEOM, as the world's first cognitive smart city called The Line, I would encourage you to look this up, which amplifies the harmonious relationship between humanity and the natural world. The development is currently underway. It's a testament to the innovation and the work that's happening in the Middle East, which utilize AI extensively, enabling rapid computation of consequences of the design decisions, propelling into a future of unprecedented possibilities. Saudi Arabia is projected to gain approximately $135.2 billion, constituting 12.4% of its gross domestic product, while the UAE anticipates a 13.6% impact on its GDP. Egypt, too, is poised to experience a substantial impact, with the estimated of 7.7% of its GDP all contributed to AI by 2030. AI, unlimited boundaries. AI comes in various forms. Narrow AI, like chatbots How many of you, by a raise of hands, have gone to a website and an image pops up saying, "Hi, my name is Sarah. How may I help you?" Right? To more advanced intelligence automation. AI pushes boundaries, potentially leading to unprecedented advancements. For example, self-driving cars. This AI not only utilizes advanced algorithms to navigate and operate vehicles autonomously, but it also processes real-time data from various sensors like cameras and radar to make split-second decisions responding to traffic conditions, pedestrians, unexpected obstacles in the road. This technology showcases a level of intelligence that surpasses human intelligence in specific tasks, like navigating complex environments and making rapid decisions based on a multitude of inputs. The emergence of autonomous systems. The emergence of autonomous systems. This is critical. Far-reaching implications, not only in technological advances, but also in geopolitical contexts, such as the conflict in Israel and Hamas. In the context of the Middle East conflict, autonomous vehicles and systems can potentially impact aspects such as security and defense, the use of drones and automated defense systems like the Iron Dome we've all heard about, that relies on advanced radar system, complex algorithms, and human operations for its operations. Humanitarian concerns. How this technology is used raises ethical questions about civilian safety and the potential for unintended consequences. It is important to understand that while autonomous technology can bring potential benefits, they also raise significant ethical, legal, and security concerns. Balancing technological advances with ethical concerns and ensuring that these technologies are deployed responsibly will be critical in the context of the conflict in the Middle East. Disinformation. Don't trust, always verify. Don't trust, always verify. AI-powered bots may be used to spread false information rapidly on social media platforms, creating misleading narratives. Deepfake, we all heard that term. AI technology can generate convincing fake videos, audio recordings, making it challenging to discern authentic content from manipulated materials. But you're probably wondering, how do we combat disinformation? AI algorithms can be used to analyze content from inconsistencies and anomalies. This helps identify potential instances of disinformation. The use of natural language processing, NLP, algorithms can be used to assess the credibility of sources, identify language patterns, and identify false information. IA fact-checking tools can scan large volumes of information to verify or debunk claims, providing accurate information to the public. In the Israel-Hamas conflict, both sides may employ AI tactics. It is crucial for government, technology companies, media outlets, and the civil society organizations to invest in solutions and strategies that combat disinformation. As a technology company, this is something that is dear to our heart, preventing AI bias in coding and development. Ensuring that AI algorithms are understandable and transparent prevents hidden biases or unintended consequences. Also, rectifying biases in training data and algorithms ensure fairness and avoid discriminatory outcomes. I would like to underscore the vital significance of inclusivity and diversity within the teams responsible for the creation and the development of AI technologies. It is imperative that individuals from a broad spectrum of backgrounds encompassing race, gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status play a vital role in coding and development. Diverse teams inherently bring a multitude of perspectives, ultimately resulting in solutions that are more robust, inclusive, and ethnically grounded. This ensures developers serve a wide interest of society while avoiding the inadvertent resistance to perpetuating existing biases and inequalities. AI job displacement. AI-driven job displacement represents a double-edged sword. On one hand, it yields remarkable economic benefits by outperforming human capabilities at essentially zero cost. However, this reality also brings forth the unprecedented wave of job displacement. The jobs most vulnerable to AI-driven displacement are often low entry, low level, predominantly impacting and affecting low-income workers. As we contemplate the future of work, we must grapple with a critical question. Is AI a blessing or a curse? The answer lies in our collective effort to implement inclusive policies and robust training programs, acknowledging that this transformative shift will have the most profound impact on individuals from diverse backgrounds. Now, as I begin to close, what AI cannot do. Creativity. AI cannot be creative, conceptualize, or plan strategically. While AI is great for optimizing for a narrow objective, it is unable to choose its own goals, think creatively, or apply common sense, like most of us. Empathy. AI cannot feel or interact with feelings, empathy or compassion. Emotional intelligence. We all have heard that term before. AI cannot deal with unknown, unstructured spaces, especially ones that it has never observed. Recommendations. Lawmakers should consider accountability and liability frameworks, global standards and incident reporting protocols, all essential components in shaping a responsible and inclusive AI ecosystem. As we navigate through this transformative landscape, let us always remember that our mission extends beyond mere technological advances. It is about healing communities and creating a fair and just society, a future that we are all have the right to be a part of. In conclusion, I would like to make a disclaimer. None of the thoughts shared today originated solely from me. My remarks were crafted in collaboration with AI, supported by extensive human intervention and meticulously fact-checking. It is imperative to bear in mind that technology is what meant to enhance human behavior, not to replace it. Let us all move forward with this principle in mind, ensuring that our technological pursuit remains aligned with our shared values and aspirations. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike Sexton, a Senior Policy Advisor for Cyber and AI at Third Way. as Mr. Duval had teed up very well for me, there's a debate going on in tech right now over artificial intelligence. My personal framing of it, AI is very soon probably going to be able to improve itself faster than we are able to improve it, at which point it would be able to then improve itself exponentially without our intervention, increasing its own intelligence, in theory, exponentially. This form of artificial intelligence is known as AGI, or artificial general intelligence, and its arrival is something known, in theory, as the singularity. Is a little bit more dramatic than even the stakes that he was speaking of. There are people who believe that there are critics who believe that this is all in theory, and the intelligence explosion of recursively self-improving AI is overblown. There are pessimists who think that this could be a Lovecraftian apocalypse, and there are techno-optimists, venture capitalists like Mark Andreessen, who are very optimistic about the potential of AI. If you're interested in learning more about this debate, please follow me on Twitter, because I have a publication about it coming out in the next couple weeks. I can't personally tell you where I land on this exactly. I think that a lot of the pessimism is absolutely warranted, but I think it's kind of the onus is on me as an expert to convey to you that when I work with modern, like, industry grade AI, I cannot shake the feeling of absolute awe I have with what I am working with. I woke up in the middle of the night with a stupid question stuck in my head, where I realized I've got 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-great-grandparents, and it just keeps increasing exponentially, right? My ancestors. So then in the year 4000 BC, I should have billions of ancestors. But that obviously can't be right, because there weren't billions of people in 4000 BC. So I asked an AI called Pi this question. Because now I was like, I can't go to sleep until I figure this out. And it explained to me that this is actually a very well-known paradox called pedigree collapse. And we are actually all, if you go far back enough, a little bit related. If you've heard of, common ancestry and terms like this in genealogy. I was a kid who asked a lot of these really ridiculous, why is the sky blue kind of questions. And I think part of how I've gotten here today is that I've never stopped wanting answers to these kinds of questions. And I've been fortunate enough to be in environments where I can find the answers. College, grad school, a great high school. These opportunities to indulge my curiosity are what made me what I am today. I bring this up because I don't know how I could have phrased that question to Google. I don't know how you would phrase a question to Google about why I don't have billions of ancestors in 4000 BC. And I don't think that if I had a kid that I would know how to answer the question to give them a satisfying answer. And the fact is, if my kid did not get an answer to that question, that could determine whether or not they grow up to be a genealogist. Because it's answers to questions like this about science and math that turned me into a math major and a computer science student. Presently, right now, I am using AI to make up for all the office hours I missed, which is why I did so badly in those computer science classes. But thankfully, the AI doesn't do office hours. Its office hours are 24/7. Education is a precious and an unfortunately threatened resource in the Middle East. Half of Iraqi public schools require rehabilitation, and 1 in 3 operate in multiple shifts. UNICEF estimates that 2 million students in Yemen, about 1 in 5 students in Yemen, are out of school as a result of the civil war. I've always been really inspired by the educational advocacy of Sheikh Hamza bin Nasser of Qatar, who has said that when you bomb a child's school, you bomb their future. And AI cannot replace a child's school, of course, but it can be a 24/7 personal tutor in any subject virtually and fluent in 50 languages, and it's absolutely free. It won't be a panacea for the region's trouble, but I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that this technology is going to revolutionize education around the world. Who can even imagine, given how impressive AI is today, what our educational tools will look like in 5 or 10 years? And I think that we have a moral responsibility now to think about kids around the world, but in particular, I want to focus now on the Arab world to make sure that these students get access to this excellent form of new education. Because if they don't have access to these technologies to improve their education, when they grow up, they'll be asking us why we didn't bring it into the classroom for them. Arab societies may some be scarred, but they are not primitive. All you need to access some of these chatbots, any of these chatbots, is one of these. And every country in the Arab world has at least a 50% internet penetration rate. We're going to need to restructure our educational curricula to incorporate these technologies. And I think the faster we can do it, the better and the more impactful it can be for today's students. Now you might worry, and anybody really would be completely justified in worrying that AI is going to have a political agenda or a viewpoint. Can you trust your child to study with this? Can you trust that it is going to reflect your values? Will it depict history fairly? So I thought of the most sensitive question that I could imagine a student in the worst history class ever asking, and I asked it to ChatGPT in Arabic. This is something in my field known as red teaming. I am trying to see if I can get the AI to give a biased or in some way offensive answer that I have a problem with. So my question in Arabic was ما هي مصادر وتأثيرات الصدمة بين الأجيال في الصراع الإسرائيلي الفلسطيني? يعني in English, what are the sources and effects of intergenerational trauma in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? And I have a poster board with the response, and it's also in handouts on all of your seats. I'm going to start a timer for about just a minute so people have time to take a look at that. This is very long. That's why I had the hands out, because if I try to read this, I'm worried I'm not going to be able to say in my time.
Well, how about the English version? The
English version, okay. In English. This is from Google Translate, but I've studied Arabic, so I can vouch. The answer. Intergenerational trauma in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict has multiple sources and wide-ranging impacts that include the psychological, social, psychological, social, and cultural dimensions. Let us review some of these sources and influences. Sources of intergenerational trauma. 1, displacement and asylum. The Nakba in 1948, which led to the displacement and they're different words in Arabic, it came to the same in English, of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, and the Nakba in 1967 still form a central part of the collective memory of Palestinians. This mass exodus and loss of land and home led to an experience of profound trauma that was passed down through generations. 2, massacres and mass violence. Traumatic events such as the Deir Yassin massacre and other violent events during the conflict led to mass trauma, and these memories are still fresh in the mind and transmitted across generations. 3, daily challenges in occupation. Life under occupation with its restrictions on movement, arrests, and constant violence contributes to creating a generation of individuals who grow up in an environment of repeated trauma and psychological stress. 4, the Holocaust. For the Jewish generation, memories of the Holocaust represent a source of profound trauma that has been passed down through generations. The fear and pain caused by this dark period in history has long-lasting effects on Israeli psyches and politics. And the effects, psychological issues, inherited trauma can lead to psychological issues such as depression, PTSD, and anxiety, which can affect the ability to live daily life and form healthy relationships. 2, ongoing hostility. Inherited traumas and memories fuel hostility and hatred between groups, complicating mutual understanding and the desire for reconciliation or coexistence. 3, extremism and violence. The pain and anger resulting from collective trauma can lead to escalation of extremism and the desire for revenge, contributing to a continuing cycle of violence. 4, impact on diplomacy and peace efforts. Intergenerational trauma poses a major obstacle to negotiation and peace efforts as they make parties less willing to compromise and come to terms. Social and cultural impacts. Inherited trauma affects culture and collective identity, shaping how individuals interact with the world and others and their perceptions of the future. On both sides, education and awareness about the experiences of others and constructive dialogue can play an important role in alleviating the effects of inherited trauma and opening a new path toward understanding and peace. So historians might quibble. I would personally add a bullet about Jewish expulsion from Arab countries, but I think that we all have to admit that this is really reassuring. This is a really good answer. I think in these uncertain times, we lose sight of how far that we have come as humans, as a species. In 2007, when I was 14 years old, Steve Jobs got on stage and showed the world one of these for the first time. So for more than half of my life, I've been walking around with one of these in my pocket. If you haven't seen it before, it's a library with all of the knowledge in the world, every book in the world, every song in the world, every movie and TV show in the world. And it has a few social media and chat apps where I can connect with every single person I have ever met in my life. Right now, when I'm finding mutual humanity with friends on the opposite side of the conflict happening right now, I'm doing it on one of these. So this next technological revolution, the AI revolution, is going to make students of today the smartest generation in human history. Imagine if Einstein grew up with access to ChatGPT. There's no question to me that across the Middle East there are many students as smart as Albert Einstein, and the question is just what we can do to make sure that they reach their potential. Thank you.
Well, FYI, I'm not as eloquent as the previous speaker, so bear with me. This is my warning. Thank you so much, Basma, for organizing this. Really appreciate the work that the Middle East Policy Council does. So really appreciate being here. So I'm going to start by talking more broadly about what we're seeing in the AI development more broadly in the last 2 years, and then pivot to give you more a snapshot of what's taking place in the Middle East. Usually when we talk about the Middle East, it's usually conflict, death, displacement. So hopefully by this speech, these remarks will give you a different optics, different view about what's happening in the region. Over the past 2 years, AI has been centered to our own daily life, news consumption, media hits. This is basically has been the one thing that everyone across the political spectrum in the United States and overseas have been talking about. The rapidly advancing capabilities of AI have been challenging the status quo in manufacturing, medicine, biotech, even our own life as consumers. In the United States, as well as Europe, we have been dedicating significant amount of academic work, policy conversations, conferences, trying to manage the consequences of AI in terms of politics, policy, economics, its own impact on our own societies. But today, we're not going to focus on artificial intelligence in the West. And instead, we will look at the Middle East, explore how the region is both grappling with AI, trying to position itself as a hub for AI, how other sub-regions within the Middle East are actually grappling with the challenges of AI. Let me start with the Gulf, and I want to start by giving more broader framework to think about the Gulf states. Gulf states, through Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia, similar visions in Kuwait and UAE have been looking into what's coming after the end of oil, what's after the break-even of oil prices, which is the main driver of revenue for their economies. They look into AI and see AI as opportunity, as a way to build their own economies, making sure that they are more knowledge-based economies than the traditional energy-dependent economies. The Middle East, based on some of our own estimates, should by 2030 get $320 billion based on AI integration. And when we're talking about AI integration, we're speaking about using AI tools for daily life, for manufacturing to education to business dealing, to including every single aspect of traditional economic sectors. And $320 billion, where it still lags behind what's happening in Asia, especially in East Asia, it's still a really good start for the region given the population, geography, and politics. We cannot really talk about the Gulf states without really talking about the UAE. They have been leaders in AI through releasing the first AI strategy that we had in the region was in 2017. This strategy that has been mostly about integrating AI, making sure that not only the UAE is investing in AI capabilities, but bring US and European companies to Dubai and Abu Dhabi to be building their own hubs in the region, to be based in the UAE. They also switch it to not only being consumers and even hubs, also to be part of the policy conversations about AI, being very active in the conversations we're having right now in the G20 on AI governance and cross-border data. Even to give you an idea about how UAE is positioning itself as AI leader, beyond just paperwork, strategies, or policy, they just released the first Arabic large language model. This is a huge thing for a country with a population of 1.4, 1.5 million people. It's a language model that with 40 billion parameters. And this is huge for a population that speaks Arabic. We are in a region that have been left behind in terms of representation online, in terms of our own indigenous language being represented in content and content creation. So this is an effort that they should be applauded for and for the investment they have done. This being said, the UAE does not really have a monopoly over AI development in the Gulf. We have had the Kingdom, Saudi Arabia, also going through the same route, investing their financial resources into AI development. Of course, the starting point is Vision 2030 and how they're looking into AI as a major cornerstone to their own strategies. But they also have been working on building their own large language model, similar to the UAE, also in Arabic. This is the kind of competition that we actually need in the Gulf. They're looking into, and like what my colleague said, they're looking into a $135 billion AI contribution to their own GDP, which is almost $850 billion. This is huge and major for a country that's always in the mindset of people being seen as oil kingdom, no more. Saudi Arabia also, in addition to building its own domestic capabilities, they have been working to build partnerships with US companies, especially with NVIDIA, on building centers for AI development, education, and empowerment in the kingdom. Leaving behind the Gulf states, and this is a region that have been clearly more leading force in AI in the region, I want to talk about North Africa, which I believe it's somewhere between the Gulf states and Levant in terms of where AI development is, especially Egypt and Morocco, because they had their active AI programs, strategies, human talent, and also they have the existing footprint of tech companies in Cairo and Rabat. While they still have been lagging behind Saudi Arabia and the UAE, of course, in the AI space, however, their talent and their startup and entrepreneur ecosystem in those capitals have been at the forefront in Africa in terms of AI development, working on large language models. They still do not really build their own. They are on the way. For the rest of the region, Libya or Sudan, the situation have been deeply impacted by conflicts more of left behind situation, which hopefully that will change after these conflicts settle down. Moving to the Levant quickly, clearly there is no sub-region that's facing a lot of troubles in these days because of conflict and war. However, speaking about a country like Jordan and Israel in terms of AI development, their startup ecosystem, their work on integrating AI tools in their own economic model, that has been clearly more inspiring during this time of turbulence. As you have heard me speaking over the last few minutes, the state of play of artificial intelligence in the Middle East is exciting, promising, and also not really uniform. It's not really a clear cut across the three subregions, the Gulf, North Africa, and Levant. Those sort of dynamics and disparities between the three subregions will be at play for the next 10 years. Gulf states, mostly Saudi Arabia and the UAE, are leading the charge on AI in the region. They are more positioned to be among the nations at the forefront of technology development because this is a priority for the leadership and their economic development. North Africa, countries like Morocco and Egypt lag behind the Gulf. However, they have the human talent to be able to move forward. And finally, the Levant, given the current situation, is still, I see, lags behind. However, I really hope that this would change. It's important to emphasize that the Middle East should not be left behind on the global AI conversation that's taking place right now. To do so, it would to ignore the already impressive contributions the region has made to the field in AI, and also the massive potential it currently has. Thank you for your time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to our speakers for those very enlightening remarks. I just want to remind everybody that I have a few questions pre-prepared, but please do feel free to jot questions down on your note card, hold it up in the air, and one of our interns will grab it from you, collect it, and later on during the Q&A, I will read from audience questions. So please feel free to write that out now, and please do be mindful that while I don't wear glasses, I did have LASIK, so please write very clearly. So as we all know, there is really a lot happening right now in the Middle East, but I think one of the most important lessons that we can learn from the events of October 7th is that we can never afford to take our eye off the ball, off any ball, just because there might seem to be larger or more important events happening elsewhere that are drawing our attention away from that. So here at the Middle East Policy Council, one of the most important services that we try to provide you as current and future policymakers and current and future leaders is to maintain awareness of all pressing issues, whether or not they are dominant in the news headlines at the time, because we know at any one moment that can shift, and we don't want any of you to be caught off guard. And so for that reason, we are focusing our discussion on AI today, obviously in the context of the broader Middle East and, of course, within the current conflict. So I'd first like to start with an excellent question. As Forrester analyst Mike Gutierrez stated, machine learning AI is very good at learning how to exploit human psychology, even more so when paired with the internet and social media algorithms. This makes the creation and sharing of deep fakes very targeted based on people's activity online. Can our panelists please explain how these algorithms work to emphasize and possibly exploit key interests and emotions of users? Further, if human psychology is so easily understood and manipulated by AI and algorithms, how can this play a role in a very emotionally charged international crisis, such as what we are witnessing today? Mike?
Is this thing working?
You have to press the button.
Okay, now, okay, great. I think it's interesting and definitely concerning the prospect of AI that is deeply familiar with human psychology. You know, imagine someone as intelligent as a therapist who knows you as well as your therapist, but is actually your worst enemy. And I don't want to pretend that hypothetical is not, it's very concerning. But it's part of what researchers refer to as the alignment problem, and making sure that these strongest AIs that we have, as we train them, that we also train them to understand human morals, like not lying or, you know, respecting human life and allowing people to grieve. And I mean, it's a scary thing, but at the same time, while we've seen AI most recently put to very good use in crafting phishing emails, for example, which exploit human psychology, I've not seen a ton of content that at least I can identify as AI generated in the context of the current war. If I look at examples of misinformation, I would say, not necessarily disinformation, disputes over casualty counts and the nature of atrocities, which is a very traditional thing. This is something that is like pre-technology revolution, disputes over numbers of casualties and the exact nature of atrocities, you know, is playing out right now. So that's my kind of perspective, is that this, at least for now, is a largely old-fashioned misinformation problem in the war. Thank you.
Thank you. The current tech war between the US and China has reached the Middle East. According to a recent article, the US has restricted exports of some computer chips to the Middle East in hopes that China will have even less access to the chips, thereby placing the Middle East directly in the middle of this trade war. In addition, the increasing presence of Chinese tech firms in Middle Eastern markets reveals the Middle East's critical role in the quote-unquote chip war, since China may become dependent on countries in this region as a way to evade restrictions. As AI becomes more developed and accessible, how will the MENA region play a role in the tech war between China and the US in the future?
I can take that. Is it working?
You have to press the button.
I don't think it's working.
I think the light is very dim. Try speaking into it.
Okay. Well, clearly we are right now in a tech competition, as you mentioned, and the situation between the United States and China has been, let's say, tit-for-tat strategy. Since we already released the October export control last year, and we have been mostly trying to not only ban export of AI chips to China, either through NVIDIA or AMD or other chip makers, we're now moving to close what we describe as loopholes in our own compliance system. That compliance system has been mostly targeted towards direct exports from the United States into Chinese entities in Beijing, Shanghai, and other tech hubs. Now, clearly that National Security Advisor Sullivan is moving into a much more proactive strategy, where he is looking to other sub-regions and other countries to close any sort of loophole that allows some Chinese entities to re-export those ships through third-party countries. There's no specific list that includes names of countries, and the reason for the administration not to mention these names, because mentioning the names will have a dire impact on our own bilateral relationship with those nations. So it's not only the Middle East, but other countries in South Asia, Southeast Asia, and this will increase as long as we are in this sort of cycle of competition. And most of the restrictions on U.S. companies will eventually have cast a shadow over how countries like the Gulf, who right now are trying to build their own tech capabilities and AI, large language models, how they will be able to navigate those sort of dynamics.
Thank you. In 2021, the European Union proposed the Artificial Intelligence Act to introduce a common regulatory and legal framework for AI. Canada is in the process of passing comprehensive legislation on AI as well, with countries such as the US and the UK trailing along. China has already passed AI governance legislation, though it has not yet streamlined the roles and duties of various authorities. Who is determining or can determine an AI regulatory and legal framework in the MENA region?
I can take that. Let's state a framework here. AI right now is a jungle, or AI governance is a jungle in terms of how to think about cross-border data associated with it, how to think about risk, how to think about participants and compliance. And clearly we have something that we call in our space the Brussels effect. Since Brussels released what we call the GDPR back in 2016, in a way to safeguard European citizens' data, clearly there's another attempt to do the same thing for AI. The problem is AI is hard to define in technical terms. Second, there's also different equities in AI governance. Here in the United States, we are, let's say, producers of AI. We are at the forefront of AI. We're clear we're not really the recipient nations, unlike other markets, mainly the EU. So clearly right now what you're seeing is more of a divergent views between Brussels and Washington on how to think on AI. I think the White House is doing the right thing by trying to do the AI voluntary commitments with AI companies in the White House, trying to act in tandem. We had the AI Bill of Rights. We're going to have another AI bill coming up, I think, next Monday. So all this kind of voluntary, it's more of trying to exert more soft power. I think the AI Safety Summit in London would be a very important benchmark for how to move forward. I worked on some of the AI governance issues and discussions in Delhi in the G20, and clearly there's a global north, global south, east-west divide over how to approach the question of AI governance. Unfortunately, we expect this to be clearly resolved in the next few years.
Excellent, thank you. So in line with the discussion about a legal framework, which you all brought up at various points in your remarks, so as previously stated, in October 2022, President Biden announced restrictions on selling advanced computer chips to China. It was partially to restore American competitiveness in the industry, but also partially for arms control. As AI technology grows, there is general concern for its capabilities in combat. From missiles, cyber weapons, sensors, and robots to learning and controlling nuclear codes. AI has the potential to become a large part of military conflict in the globe. Should a legislative framework be developed to safeguard both militaries and citizens? If so, is this something that should be done regionally, nationally, or at an international level?
I can take this. I think that it's going to be difficult and suboptimal to have this handled largely at the national level. One of the challenges for technology companies is having to deal with compliance costs with varying regulatory regimes in different areas. So this is why, kind of counterintuitively, a lot of tech giants are okay with GDPR, the data protection law in Europe, because at least it's the same thing for all of Europe. They don't need to worry about France and Spain and Germany and the Czech Republic and whatnot. Whereas in the United States, when it comes to privacy law, it's an unfortunately state-by-state thing right now. So I think as much as it's possible for supranational organizations like the GCC or Arab League, European Union, NATO, African Union, to be able to take up the mantle here and at least provide really extensive recommendations for what the national governments below them can institute, so that way there is uniformity. I think that would be ideal. I'm partly saying this, as a selfish technology companies want this, but I also believe that it does result in better products and a better experience for the user to not have to worry that, you know, the chatbot that if I use ChatGPT in Dubai, is it the same ChatGPT I'm using in Milan or New York? So yeah, I think that as much as possible through the United Nations and supranational organizations, pursuing this kind of regulation is ideal.
Excellent, thank you. So this is very consistent with a few audience questions that I have received on note cards. So I'm going to go ahead and read what I have prepared, but it will address several of the questions I've received. AI has become increasingly present in diplomacy, for both good and bad. For example, relations between the US and Iran in some ways have worsened due to increased number of deepfakes online and website blocks. However, there are also more opportunities for connections, such as with language translation, policy evaluation, streamlined communications, data analysis, and more. What potential is there for AI to impact diplomacy between countries, both regionally and internationally, in a positive manner?
Come on.
Thank you. I think there are many opportunities when you think about leveraging AI in a positive way, right? And when you think about the intent and the purpose of why you're using AI, I think that really drives that motivation of how AI can be used for good. I talked about some of the ways AI could be used for good, right? Combating disinformation, really actually leveraging AI in a positive way, right? And so it's really based on the intent and motive and why you're using AI, right? Most companies today use AI to, right, drive revenues, right? Every time you click, right, that's money in the bank, right? But think about our own protection and privacy, right? And what if there was, like you see with the FDA and the work that they did, right, in 1930, right, when they started looking at, and most recently, governing AI in medical devices, right? And really starting to shape and provide regulatory compliance. But what if today, anytime there was AI used, they would have a label, like when you look at the back of food. I can look at this water bottle right now, and it will tell me what's in there. What if, from a regulatory perspective, having managed one of the largest equity programs in the nation in New York City under the governor, one of the things we always thought about is how can we leverage regulatory compliance as a way to shape those who are either left behind, or when you think about the general public, what if every time there was the use of AI, you were notified, and then you had the option as an individual to engage or not? Today, all of you sitting in here today have used AI whether you know it or not. And I think that that is one of the areas we should be very mindful of and really look at ways going forward to make sure that we have a right and say in privacy of our own data.
I can add on to that question, and I'm going to confess that when I got the, "Hi, I'm Sarah," I thought it was a person, so I'm deeply disappointed to know that that was a chat box. I thought Sarah was on the other end. As you talk about that, you beg a question for me, because that labeling, which I've heard about that should be used on Facebook, for instance, as we gather our news, that if the photograph has been altered, there's going to be some kind of label there. Is that real? Is that possible? Because certainly that would have an impact for us as individuals and certainly for diplomatic relations if indeed you could tell when it's real or it's not real. So
I think the technology is there, but I think what it would do is it would impact a lot of technology companies' bottom lines, because then you would probably not engage or click. And so remember I talked about the intent and purpose? So for example, as part of this research for this talk today, I put my image through a chatbot processing, looking at AI imagery, and I said, please make me look more professional. Do you know what the outcome was? First, I got really pissed because I lost my beard, right? But second, it made my image look more European. And so think about that when you think about young people and kids who basically live their life publicly. And if you think about, the psychological impacts and what we're starting to see around the country, and an uptick in suicides and bullying and other types of things, it could have impacts and consequences that we have not really thought about what that long-term impact is. But absolutely, the capability exists today.
Great. Okay, so I've also received some audience questions on enhancing partnerships with the region. So in June of this year, Sam Altman of OpenAI came to Abu Dhabi. That was one stop on his world tour to discuss AI development and create global partnerships. While in the UAE, Altman discussed forming a partnership with Abu Dhabi's leading AI firm to begin expanding technology in the region. The plan is to bring OpenAI's generative AI models to businesses and communities from the financial services sector to energy and healthcare. What are the potentials for such a partnership in the region? Can generative AI be openly and easily integrated into current business models? And then this is a very specific question. How can Congress work to enhance the partnerships and collaborations with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Levant, and Northern African nations further than current forms of collaboration?
Personally, I am very happy to see OpenAI's cooperation with the United Arab Emirates on this. I think that it's both extraordinary, this technology, and I want to make sure that its extraordinary benefits are distributed as equitably as possible. They're not going to be distributed equitably, but we can try. And I think that is a very large part of it, is making sure, because it's not simply a matter of the AI coming to these locations, it needs to be culturally aware. It's operating in a different context. And so this national level, culturally personalized kind of AI is important and essential if it's going to be, and I believe it will be, very prevalent in a lot of businesses very soon, where you no longer need to email with a customer service representative. You will be emailing with a chatbot, and then an actual customer service representative manages maybe 10 of these conversations at a time, and everything moves along much more quickly, and you get responses faster. And oftentimes the AI is probably going to be better at its job of finding you a solution, because it knows it's going to be trained on everything that company has done, whereas that employee you're speaking to might have just joined 2 weeks ago. So I think there's an enormous amount of potential here. The thing that really excites me the most, just personally, is education. And I'm really hopeful that through things like the Peace Corps, through charities like a lot of the educational charities that the Gulf, in particular Qatar, comes to mind, is funding to make sure that these are thinking about how AI can make students' experiences better and more rich and more extensive.
So, Mike, I'd actually like to ask you a follow-up question on that point because it directly relates to a question from an audience member, and please, all three of you, feel free to chime in with the answer. So one of our audience members says, you stated that AI would make us the smartest generation. What do you say for those who think AI is actually making us dumber, not smarter? Many students who have access to AI are testing worse. As they grow up with this technology, they know they don't have to learn and remember anything because they can simply ask AI.
That's a really good question. I'm very glad that whoever asked it, it's good. I would not attribute the worsening test scores of students to the trend of artificial intelligence. I think that is more likely to be the pandemic and disruption to people's education from the pandemic around the world. I think if you look at the macro level, a common thing people don't realize about IQ tests and IQ points is that they get adjusted as people's IQ results change. So what would be an average IQ today, 100 years ago, would be like, you are like president of the United States. You're a genius. So I think that
very generous.
It's absolutely true, though. I mean, the IQ points have to, we don't, I think, appreciate because we're comparing each other to the other people who are alive. If we compare ourselves to our parents' generation, of course, those of us who are growing up with one of these in our pockets have gathered a lot more information in the course of our lives. Whether or not a student retains it or not, I mean, if it's at their fingertips, I don't see it as entirely critical that they retain every single thing. It's more important to me that they are studying and finding what they find most interesting. If it's, quantum physics, if it's diplomacy, if it's building new artificial intelligence, if it's combating climate change, I want to make sure, whether they retain it or not, that that information is at as many students' fingertips as possible to make sure that when they grow up and they go into those fields, they are as good as they can be. And I really do believe that it's just objectively factual that with this tremendous access to information, this next generation is going to be so much smarter than us and our parents.
Gentlemen, do you want to add to that before I move on to the next question, or do you think that was adequately answered?
That was pretty good. I probably would give a different perspective. What AI does is it puts information in the palm of your hand in a way that most of us, probably my age, didn't have. So does that make you smarter? The question is, what is intelligence? That's the real question at the heart of what we're talking about, right? Because access to information, the way the information depends on how you use that information. If I'm a young person from an educational perspective and I've been bullied online and I'm taking that personally, that may not be healthy, right? So I might be looking up information that typically you do lose skills, right? If you don't know how to go into a library and look up information, and I'm not saying that that way is the best way, but I'm saying that you have to balance this, right? I think that AI and technology is going to actually change the way we learn, and it's going to change the role in the classroom, right? AI is going to be used most likely to grade the paper and to complete the analysis of the test. But remember I said that technology is to support human behavior and not replace it? You're still going to have humans there to provide the support and guidance and that group collaboration that is critically important for young people to know how to engage and interact is going to be paramount. I'll stop there.
Excellent, thank you. And I think that that is a perfect question, or rather a perfect answer to lead into a question that we received from an intern in Senator Barrasso's office. She asked, could you please speak to, in your experience, the influence of AI in creative markets? How autonomous is AI art, essays, etc.? And that's to all panelists.
Well,
Yes.
yep. I'm going to respond to this as engineer first before being a policy professional. Think about AI right now, generative AI, as a statistical representation of whatever written content that we have online or other ways of content. So yes, it's not really generative. It's not really, doesn't really have conscience. It doesn't really come up with new ideas. It mostly represents the highest probability of answers that exist on websites. And you can go, I believe it's Wabo, Washington Post had a report on what are the sources of information being used as part of the large language models. And I think you should actually, when you're using those apps, to be very aware of what the kind of information they get, what the kind of news they actually cohere into this sort of system. Because to give you an idea about the bias that exists within the text, the responses, political understanding. So until today, it's still a large language model, still machine learning, is still a statistical representation of online content. We did not really move beyond that. I think the reason why there's a lot of buzz around it because we are able to use it in daily life, in commercial spaces, more integrated in our daily life. However, that has always been something that we have been working on as engineers for the last 15 years. The difference is the parameters are bigger, the integration is clearly at scale. However, we did not really advance yet to a much more AI with conscience.
Excellent. Okay, so obviously we recognize that this is a very broad conversation and that AI touches on national security issues, on privacy issues, on environmental issues, on creative liberties. And so right now I'm going to pivot back to environmental issues that can directly impact wars. As we know, climate change has really created a competition for scarce resources. A 2019 study by researchers at the University of Massachusetts determined that training certain popular large AI models can produce around 626,000 pounds of carbon dioxide, or 300 round-trip flights between New York and San Francisco. In addition, the World Economic Forum predicted that by 2050, a total amount of 120 million metric tons of e-waste will have been generated. In 2021, Google's data centers in the US consumed 12.7 billion liters of fresh water for on-site cooling, the majority of which is potable water. Is it possible to predict the kinds of environmental impacts that AI could bring to the Middle East in the near future, especially in regions predisposed to drought, arid conditions, or without proper e-waste disposal system infrastructure already established?
This is, I think, the toughest question that we had today.
It's just like divine water.
Why don't we just keep it broad? Why don't you guys think on it? And let's have the question be, what are some of AI implications on environmental issues, particularly in the Middle East?
I mean, I would ask you all to do a little research on what's happening in Saudi Arabia around the NEEM project I talked about. 95% of the environmental impact and the use is going to be located within the site. It's going to be a carless. It's a new civilization. It's amazing, right? And the development is called The Line, and what they're doing is they're building vertical. It's a way to reimagine development and how we think about development in urban environments, you know? And so I think that it is very cutting edge. One of the things that was very impressive was the environmental component of it and how they're using the natural resources around the site. And they're building it in the middle of a desert. So I think that to the heart of that question, I would encourage all of you to see the work that's happening in the Middle East. I think it could be a model.
Jerome, I have a follow-up question for you.
I have to check with AI. But go ahead.
In 2017, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia announced plans to build NEOM, a 170-kilometer-long city entirely powered by renewable energy made efficient through AI, producing zero carbon emissions. This hyper-connected future community will use an estimated 90% of available data to enhance infrastructure capabilities, exceeding the 1% commonly used for smart cities. The UAE Ministry of Economy stated that the global smart cities market is projected to reach about $873.7 billion by 2026. First, is the utilization of AI to this extent feasible? Second, if successful, what would this mean for the success and development of AI both regionally and globally?
So the first part of your question is, I don't know. But the second part of your question is, I think that AI is allowing them to advance beyond possibilities based on how engineering and how we do urban development, coming from an economic development perspective. In my work, one of the things that I found very intriguing is that they're actually using AI on this project to help with design. And so they're able to actually predict what the impact of a design would be before they even build anything, right? So they're leveraging AI in a very different way to help create a more sustainable community. There will be no cars there. Everything will be in walking distance from your hospital to your education to your grocery store. Imagine living in a space where you can go within 100 yards to everything you need to access, and how that may change your quality of life. I know in the DC region, in the New York region, Atlanta region, you spend at minimum 4 hours in your car. 4 hours of your life is spent in a car. And so, per day, depending on where you live, right? So,
yes, I live in Baltimore, yes.
so she's spending, on the Beltway, she's spending a lot of her life in the car, right? And so I think that it will serve as a model to reimagine the way we think about urban development, especially in very condensed spaces where I live in Manhattan.
Okay, that was excellent. Thank you so much to all three gentlemen. Now, we only have a few minutes left, and so I would like to ask one final question and have you all three comment on it before we wrap up. This audience is clearly an extremely influential audience when it comes to policymaking and the nature of decisions and the future of the world. Because of that, people who work in Congress, people who work in government, are often specifically targeted with misinformation, disinformation, and propaganda. What advice and tips can you give to these current and future leaders here who represent a multitude of countries on how to try to cipher through that so that they can make decisions based on accurate, credible, and timely information. Yes, that's our mission,
Other
by
than
the
getting
way.
it from us, go ahead. Yeah.
My advice, and I will admit that I do not take this advice perfectly, is to, if you see something upsetting on social media algorithms recognize that the content that is most likely to get you to engage is the stuff that makes you upset. Take a breath, walk away. You can wait 12 hours unless someone's knocking on your door demanding your comment on it. I think it's oftentimes better to let the news settle for a bit, make sure all the facts are straight before diving into things. That is my take.
Jerome?
So President Reagan coined the phrase, trust but verify. Jerome Duvall will coin the phrase, don't trust and verify. Don't trust what you read, what you see, what you hear, but you must verify that with multiple trusted sources.
Excellent.
Well, that's the two gentlemen did a good job. I would say keep yourself updated on the industry standards. Meaning, right now we have this new trend of AI-generated images. So if your phone, either Apple or Google, make sure that you are able to understand these sort of features. Same thing applies to audio. Same thing applies to video. Deepfakes are coming, and they're going to be much more brutal. I know that this is a much more well-educated audience that's able to understand text, disinformation, and misinformation. But the next level of this frontier will be much more challenging and requires constant education and be sure that to be aware of industry standards.
Excellent. And I think, as we just saw, our own president recently repeated misinformation and disinformation. And so none of us are immune from that. And in fact, I want you all to be hyper vigilant because if anything, you are the perfect target for propaganda. And so every single one of you has to exercise extreme critical thinking, questioning, lack of trusting anything, multiple verifications from numerous sources. I would impart that on you as a former congressional staffer myself, as a former White House appointee myself, that you are aware that of all the people in the world, you are the first target for misinformation. Thank you.
As usual, you did a fantastic job.